So, I heard about, well, I like this kind of joke. The priest, the minister, and the rabbi. They were in a bar. Mitzvah. No, they were in a bar. And they were just arguing about which one of the three was a better clergy. And they decided to go, they have a little contest there. They're supposed to go to the wilderness. And they had to try to convert a bear to their religion. Well, they took the challenge. They went. A month later, they get together in the same bar. And so that's the priest. So how did it go? He says, it was great. Went to the wilderness. I found the bear. And I started to talk to him about the Lord. Now he's coming to Mass every Sunday. And then they asked the minister, how did it go? It was great. I found the bear. And I started to read the Bible to him. Now he worshiped with us every Sunday. Then they look at the rabbi. He was in a wheelchair with a broken arm, full of bruises, and a neck collar. I said, how did it go? And the rabbi said, well, thinking about it, maybe it was a bad idea to start with circumcision. I want to talk to you today about into the unknown. Into the unknown. And you see, I was going to talk about something else today, but this is something that was resonating in my head for the last few days. So last minute I decided to change the sermon. This happens to me all the time. Sometimes I don't even tell you, but it happens to me that I feel like I have to get it out of my system by making a sermon out of it. So I was thinking about reading the newspaper and talking to people about how even before the pandemic, right, millions of people around the world were suffering from anxiety and fears, right? But I said, even now, we still have uncertainty about the future. You read in the news, and you will read about unstable markets. You go to the supermarket, shortages. You see, I was going around from pharmacy to pharmacy, trying to find medication for the fever for my son, right? And I was thinking, I'm so blessed that I have a car, and I can do that. I can go, to 7 pharmacies until I find it. But I said, what about somebody who cannot do that? And I was feeling the anxiety and the fear of that person. And it's even now, we have new viruses. Who knows what's going to happen? So we're still battling. We are still battling anxiety and fears every day. And then I realized, and this is something that it was studied and they're experts on the field, that many people, when they feel anxious, when they feel afraid, what they do, they look to food, alcohol, drugs, they become workaholics, and so many other things, just as an attempt. It's an attempt to fix things, right? They feel that that's the way to fix things and to have some kind of feeling of safety. But we know that that's not the solution. That's not the solution. But I also realize that this is not something new. This is not something that happens only in the 21st century. It happened on the 20th century. It happened on the 19th century. And if you go to the Torah, it happened back in biblical times. And that is what we learn from our patriarch, Jacob. When he had to go into the unknown, this man never left his house. This man was always in the house of study. The Torah said so the last week's Parsha. Esau was the one who was always in the field, and Jacob was always at home. And the rabbi said, yes, he was always at home studying, but now he has to go into the unknown. And now he had this first encounter with the real world, and the first encounter with anxiety and fears. And we can learn from what he did when he went through those strong feelings that they were bothering him. And we see that he had this famous dream, right? Famous dream of the ladder or the stairs, went to heaven and came back, and the angels. And when he woke up from that experience. The first expression he said is, I just now recognize the presence of God in my life. I didn't realize that God was with me. And he prayed. When he had all those fears, because he had to continue his journey into the even more unknown things, he prayed to God and he said, God, I can feel your presence today, but if you remain with me, protecting me in my journey, and you give me bread and clothing and peace, God, then you will be my God, and I will give you back from everything you give me. And I realized that we talk about that, how he was going to give 10% and thing, but what sometimes we forget is the beginning of that prayer. When Jacob said, the very first thing is, I made a decision today that I'm going to see, God, your hand on everything that is going to happen to me. God, help me actually see your hand on everything that is happening to me. What he said, if you will remain with me, if I can feel you the way every day of my life, the way I feel you today, if I can feel you every day of my life, then I have nothing to fear. I have no need to be anxious. Because if I can feel your presence every day of my life, then I will know that everything is okay. And this is something that Jacob had to learn. Something new. Because we know that he was a learner. We know that he was studying, so to speak, Torah, because the Torah wasn't revealed. But he was studying the theory. But there is something that he never learned from the books. And it's the fact that there are many things that doesn't matter how much you study, you will never know. You cannot know what is going to happen tomorrow. Doesn't matter how much you study. You cannot know what the future is going to bring. Doesn't matter how much wisdom you have. So there is one more lesson that we all have to learn. And it is that we have to learn to live without knowing everything. We have to get comfortable living a life where we cannot know everything that is going to happen. And this is when sometimes we all fail, because we don't feel comfortable when we don't know what to expect, without realizing that that's life. Most of the time, we will never know what to expect. We think we have it all figured out, but then it doesn't work that way. I think the pandemic taught us that lesson for at least 3 years now, right? That doesn't matter how much you plan, there will be always things that are unknown to us. And we have to find a way to feel comfortable with that in our lives. And I think Jacob is giving us the recipe on how to do it. We have to pray like Jacob. We have to pray to God and say, God, I feel your presence today. Can you help me feeling your presence every day of my life? Because I know that, God, when I feel your presence, I feel like everything is going to be okay. But when I cannot see your presence, when I cannot feel you, when I cannot see your hand in everything that is happening, I feel anxious. I feel afraid. So there are so many things that sometimes we wish to fix in our life, and that's all good. We have lots of things lots of tools already within ourselves to change things. But it goes all so much easier if we can feel the presence of God in our life every single day. But how often do you pray for that? How often do we pray to God, please help me to feel your presence? Because we already know, when we feel the presence of God, everything goes smoother. And when we feel the presence of God, we are bold and we do things that otherwise we will never do. And I'm saying this today because we are also preparing for Hanukkah. And something very interesting happened on Hanukkah. That's why we celebrate it. We read about the story of the Jewish people. They entered into the temple. The temple was, destroyed in the inside. They needed to light the menorah, and they couldn't find any oil. And the little bit of oil they found was not kosher. They couldn't use it, except they found 1 container of oil. And they knew that it was good enough for 1 day. But they needed 8 days to make more oil. They were anxious. They were afraid. What are we going to do now? I guess somebody said, I think we should go ahead and light the menorah anyway. And they did it. And then what happened? A miracle happened. And that oil burned for 8 days. But you know why it burned for 8 days? Because somebody said, let's try. Let's do it. God was with us all along. God didn't bring us this far to leave us alone right now. Let's do it. God will help us. And then the miracle happened because they took the first step and they went into the unknown without knowing that the oil was going to burn for 8 days. But it did, in part because they decided to go ahead and light the menorah. So I believe this week's Parsha is a reminder of what kind of preparation, what kind of spiritual preparation we should have to prepare ourselves for Hanukkah. It is the kind of spiritual preparation that is telling us that life is a process when we are constantly going into the unknown. Life goes better if we get comfortable with not knowing what is going to happen tomorrow. And I just realized that it's okay. It is okay not knowing what is happening tomorrow, as long as we get to know and we trust the one who does know the future. Shabbat Shalom.